Hello, everyone. Welcome to Snap Take. I am Glazer of the Snap Judgments podcast, and every weekday you can find the best Marvel Snap takes. So be sure to like and subscribe. Today, we're taking a look at a guide to the token shop. This is largely for people who are in Pool 3 incomplete players. It's a guide to what you unlock for free and what you should consider buying with those ever precious tokens. Let's get started. First and foremost, there's a bunch of series drops. This is the big list. It's from Snapzone, as you can see right over here from the little graphic. I will be posting this. This tells you when things are going to series drop. It's important to know this for when you're buying tokens. So, what's dropping in 2 to 3 weeks this month? Tarkok, Surfer, Sentry, and Null. Cool. At least two of these cards are major meta cards you probably want to consider buying, right? So, given that that's the case, let's look. So, you want Darkhawk. If you want Darkhawk, you really want Rockslide. Rockslide is absolutely the key card to have. Rockslide turns Darkhawk from a 4/6 into a 4/10 and basically makes him a meta card. Any deck that runs Darkhawk almost always runs Rockslide. Now, you'll already have Korg. Korg also generally goes in these decks. Nice effective combo. You can build meta decks because you should already have Devil Dino. So Darkhawk is one of the key cards to get. That's why I'm strongly urging anyone who has Rockslide and is in Pool 3 but does not have Darkhawk should be using their unlock, I think, on Darkhawk. I think that's probably the best, most meta thing you can do right now. Another super fun deck is Beast Darkhawk. In combination, Beast can bounce Rock Slide a lot. Excuse me, not Rock Slide. Beast can bounce Korg a lot and make you a nice big Darkhawk. This deck very often wants Falcon, but you don't need Falcon if you bought last season's Season Pass card. If you have Hit Monkey, you can also do a Beast Hit Monkey Darkhawk deck with that Korg and bouncing Hit Monkey as an extra win condition. Either one of these should work just fine. I think the Rock Slide deck is significantly better, but both decks absolutely work. Another meta card is Surfer. I strongly urge you to not buy Surfer until you have Brood. Once you have Brood, you can build a Surfer deck that's competitive. Guaranteed. If you're having trouble with this or any of these, drop us a message. You can find the Discord in the description below, the SnapFan Discord. We have our own Snap Judgments Corner. Come in, ask me. I will happily help you deck build for any of these things. All right, so Brood. Brood with Surfer is a 312. 312 is obviously a stellar rate, right? There's enough other early pull threes, think Mr. Fantastic, think Storm, so on, that make Surfer work really, really well, even if you don't have these other key cards like Maximus and Juggernaut. Maxim and Juggernaut are going to be needed for the very best. I think Maximus is a little more important than Juggernaut, but both are fairly important to the deck. Um, you don't need them, right? As soon as you have Brood, I think you can build a Surfer deck that early pull 3 will compete. Once you're mid or later pull 3, Maximus and Juggernaut. And if you just so happen to have opened any of these, this is how I would go about it. You want Null, that's more of a problem. Obviously, Null goes really well with Galactus. Null is one of the key cards to getting the most out of Galactus. If that's the big bad you chose to buy, then Null is a good buy when he drops a level. However, you also must, not may, must have Electro and Wave. You have to have Electro and Wave to ramp into Galactus. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to play both of those cards. And then Null is just kind of a mediocre big card that you can do some Zola tricks with, but probably isn't usually worth it. And it's not really going to get you to infinite. If you have all three, Null is a good buy. Is it the highest win rate deck in the world? Absolutely not. Can you win with it? Yeah, without any question. You can hit infinite with it. It's consistent. It's a slow grind, but a lot of people find it fun and a lot of people get there. You need these three cards. There's other great cards for this deck, like Spider-Man, like Doc Ock, but once you have these three, along with Null, you're ready to start rolling. You want Sentry? Don't do it. Don't get Sentry. Sentry has better stats than my favorite 6/9 in the game, my favorite 6 cost in the game, She-Hulk. But She-Hulk is a much better buy. Sentry is a card you need a lot to make work. He's not in any real tier 1 decks, despite him being a quite good card, while She-Hulk is in an absolute ton of decks. You can put her in your Devil Dino decks. You can put her in your Infinite decks. You can build into her later in the game in Thanos decks. She-Hulk fits everywhere. She is, if you just are opening one random Series 3 at this point in the game, that card should be She-Hulk. She's stellar. No matter where you are in the game, I think I could build you a competitive She-Hulk deck. There's no better card. Go get She-Hulk. She should be your very first unlock. There are only two other pull threes that I think are always worth it, context independent worth it cards: Sarah and Mystique. Sarah immediately opens up a control build once you have her. The build goes as follows: you run a bunch of twos. This really opens up once you get Mysterio, but even think Mysterio is a later unlock for me. So even cards like Scarlet Witch and Sentinel, early pull cards, are really good with Sarah. And then you run Enchantress and Shang-Chi as a way to take out the later game. Often you'll run Killmonger and Nova as a way to get an extra strength pump too. Sarah Control does not need any later pull cards to be competitive, to be damn near T1. Now, a lot of people have lately been putting America Chavez in their Sarah decks. That's really important to see Sarah on turn 5, but it's only something I strongly recommend that you do if there's another really important card that you want to see before turn 6. I don't think the extra like 6-ish% chance of seeing Sarah alone is worth it, but if you happen to have Zabu or another key card that you really want to see early for the deck to work, as in before turn 6, then America may be worth it. Is America worth it for just Sarah? Again, I think not. Mystique opens up options all throughout the game. She's another viable option for when your first pull 3 opens. The first thing you can do with Mystique is very simply copy a Devil Dino. You come from pull 2, you know how powerful Devil Dino is, you copy it, it's stellar. Mystique has plenty of other things she can copy throughout the course of the game. Things like Iron Man for various decks, things like Darkhawk, things like Patriot. With all of these, Mystique ends up being an absolutely stellar card. So you've probably heard a lot about Patriot. Patriot's one of the meta decks. If you have Mystique, Patriot is therefore a logical next step to unlock. Once you have Mystique and Patriot, you want Ultron. Ultron is like, you can often just with those 3 cards win games. It can get you infinite just with those. You already have all the vanilla cards because, well, all but Wasp anyway, so you should be totally fine to play that deck. I like Mystique. Going back, I enjoy Sarah. Oop, excuse me. Just happened. I enjoy Sarah more than Mystique by a fair amount, but Mystique opens up way more options. So if Mystique is your first or second pull 3 unlock, you can then go into Patriot and then know that you want Patriot, then Ultron. Or you can go Mr. Negative, and Mr. Negative, along with Mystique and Bast, gives you a deck. Fundamentally, like all by themselves. They, with Iron Man, who you again already have from Pool 1, give you a deck. These are all decks I can build you, no problem. Now, it's worth being careful with Mr. Negative. Mr. Negative has a very low win rate, so if that frustrates you, don't get Mr. Negative. But Mr. Negative does have a super high cube rate. When you win with them, you tend to win big. You also get a fair amount of retreats, which helps to balance out those like frustrating losses. But Mr. Negative really wants Bast because that -1 is a 4/3 is completely OP, and both Mystique and Iron Man with 3 power are way, way better. Next up, if you had Wave back in that Galactus Null, I think Wave is actually the next card I would can say to get. So my first choice is, generally speaking, if you have Rock Slide, just get Darkhawk. You'll be happiest, I think. But if you don't have Rock Slide, I think the first card you should get is She-Hulk. The next card you want to try and aim at is Mystique, and then you can choose either Sarah for another deck option, or you can go further down the Mystique line. The card after that you should get is Wave. Wave and She-Hulk all alone create a combo. The deck is usually Doom Wave, for which you will need Dr. Doom, right? But if you wave on 5, your She-Hulk is only 2, your other card is 4. You can play 2 cards, your opponent can often only play 1. The other thing Wave enables is Death Wave, where you again wave on 5 after killing cards. If you've killed enough cards, Death becomes, if you killed at least 2 cards, Death is 2, more and she's less than 2. Another card is 4. You can do that just fine early game with cards like Iron Man, and then all the destroy cards, like your Carnage, your Deathlock, your Killmonger. You already have those from earlier pools. So Death Wave is one of the earlier decks you can play. Wave is a great option to unlock. She's gonna feel underwhelming if you think of her as just a play on 3. Unless you're ramping into Galactus, that's not what you really want to do. But it is a really powerful play on 5 for Death and She-Hulk largely. And Electro. You can, if you happen to grab Electro, let's say you got Galactus and you've got the Galactus key cards, but you want to play something else, Electro goes in Sandman decks. But you already have Sandman. Electro absolutely needs Doctor Doom and Arrow. The way it wins is it goes Electro into Sandman. That's not a lot of power anymore, right? That's 5 power across turns 3 and 4. But then ideally the next turn you have 5 energy, right, on turn 4. So hopefully you're arrowing to pull a card where you want. Then you're dooming, then you're Odining. 15 power, 15 power. Last 2 turns of the game, along with some control about where you play. Arrow is less important than Doom here. Doom is absolutely pivotal to get wide enough to win these games. Other cards like Captain Marvel help. I strongly urge you early on, at least, to play Claw in these decks, to play cards like Devil Dino in these decks. Your hand will be full. Next up, we have what you do if you have the other big bad. If you ended up getting Thanos early, if you saved up all your tokens and the big bad you chose was Thanos, and hey, don't let the big bad you choose, under any circumstances, please don't let the big bad you choose be Kang. Kang is a nice card, nowhere near the power level or gameplay impact of Thanos and Galactus. So we have, if we want Thanos, people are like, hey, the change to Lockjaw means Thanos isn't as good with Lockjaw. BS. Thanos and Lockjaw are still a top tier combo. Thanos works with an absolute ton of stuff. Very often, a lot of what you're doing is early pull cards like Professor X with Thanos, and early pull cards like Devil Dino, and early pull cards like Blue Marvel and Kazar. You already have those. So what you do is you use stones to try and cheat that kind of stuff out. Lockjaw is a mana cheat. It's literally just what the card does. So grab Lockjaw. You have what you need for a really, really strong Thanos deck. If Thanos isn't the meta tomorrow, he will be again within a couple weeks. Once you have Lockjaw, the follow-up cards are Thor, Jane Foster, and Wasp. Thor puts a 0 cost, Wasp is a 0 cost, Jane Foster finds them. All of these things are excellent to dump into Lockjaw and fundamentally create a deck all by themselves, because at that point you're popping out, ideally, cards like Infinite. You play very few low power cards, and you play a bunch of really, really strong stuff, like these cards and Jubilee, and then you get big. For this deck, Dracula is also a really big shot, but not a requirement. He's not needed in every version of this. I keep hearing Wonghuri Destroyer and Dracula are good. They can be built around. Cool. They absolutely can. Wong has a really good early on reveal deck. You can run cards like Ironheart. You can run cards like White Tiger for some reasonable power. Not going to be powerful enough once you get even past the beginning of the pool. And Cosmo ruins your entire world. Fair warning. There are cool Wong combos, but they are not overpowered. All good? You can build good stuff here. Not great. The best thing you can do with Wong is probably Black Panther Zola. It's an extremely disruptible combo, but when it goes off, it goes off. If you grab Wong, you'll climb some ranks, but you're not going to be as happy as you want to be. Shuri also was the meta a month ago. She would have been at the very top. She would have been in previous slides before. Now, I think her best home early on is Move. You need to play cards like Vision in Move decks, and then Shuri has extremely high power. She can buff that, and it can move around wherever you want, wherever you need. If you're not going to use a Shuri Move deck, okay, later on, you need a bunch of cards now. You're going to need Red Skull and Taskmaster at the very least. You probably also need She-Hulk. You probably also At this point, you need like Sauron and Typhoid Mary to play like the most meta version of the deck, which is still probably not one of the top 5 decks in the game. Is that worth it anymore? I don't think so. If you really like big numbers, go for it. Destroyer has an almost all pool 2 deck that he's really good in. Um, it ends up running like Professor X, Armor, Cosmo, and so on to mitigate the downside. And it's a really strong early pool 3 deck. By the middle of pool 3, it falls off a cliff, so it's really hard to recommend. There is right now, our friend Homeboy Maxwell is playing a Nebula Destroyer deck that seems much, much better, but that has a lot of pool 3 cards in it. It's running Adama and Nebula and just like a bunch of stuff, right? If you're gonna do that, you can, right? Like it's not undoable, but it is far more dangerous. Lastly, Dracula. Dracula is a key component in discard decks if you want to make discard decks work. He's also really good in Lockjaw decks. He also has a home in a certain flavor of zoo deck that you can build relatively early. He's a very good card, and of these 4, I think he is the highest value to unlock early. The Dracula dump decks are very, very strong, especially early pool 3. So make sure you keep an eye out for Dracula. He's a card that took me way too long to get, and once I did, I've never looked back. Really strong, really hard to counter, and fits in decks even if he doesn't immediately make a deck all by himself. Although again, Dracula Dump is right there. You don't need much more to make Dracula Dump really good. If you get fundamentally like Destroyer or Red Skull, you can probably get there with a pretty good version of that deck. Generally good cards. If you have a bunch of cards, you just want good stuff to do. You've got Daredevil, who's really good in control shells. If you like cards like Professor X, Daredevil's for you. If you want to try and make Nebula good with like Gamora, Daredevil is for you. Daredevil gives you really good snap equity as well. A lot of people really like that. Polaris is great in Surfer builds, but she's also great in anything that just wants size and tempo. She also offers you just an extra way to counter Galactus. You pull a Wolverine into the Galactus lane, Galactus doesn't go off as long as you have priority. Hard to overstate how good that is. Magneto is Hulk with upside. 612 is huge. Pulls 4s over to your lane. Can completely ruin a game plan and fits into enough different decks that he's really hard to plan for, so he wins a lot of cubes. Right now, he doesn't really have a singular home in the meta, so he's here, not in any specific deck. Hood is very good. Hood has a lot of combos. Hood and Titania fundamentally do the same thing here. Hood, you run like Carnage. Titania, you're just trying to usually play last turn unless you're playing junk. Both of these cards are excellent at dropping extra power. If you're coming from early pools, you should know that Moon Girl into a bunch of cards last turn is really strong. One of the ways you do that is with She-Hulk, and with either Hood or Titania, that like combo just sort of explodes. Especially consider, again, if you have the last season pass card, Hitmonkey. None of this is to say spend 5,000 tokens on Hitmonkey. I'd like to be clear on that. Unless like you're just getting to pool 3, Hitmonkey is not something I would spend 5,000 tokens on. I think it's a fine 3,000 token purchase, but there's enough counters in the meta that I think 5,000 is overdoing it. Red Skull's a 512. 512 is the biggest you're going to get at 5. It gives +1 to each opponent's card at that location. It's a fine card. It has a home in Dracula Dump. It ends up being necessary for Shuri. It's good in that version of Destroyer I mentioned earlier. This was a card that would be, again, higher up on the list, but this got nerfed twice, and then the deck it was in got nerfed as well. So, Red Skull is a really powerful card, but it might actually even be just like last on this list of cards I would get. Finally, I have no idea if Hell is good. Our friend Elite Hassa hits infinite, but he doesn't just hit infinite. He hits rank like 500. If you're newer, you might not know that that means you are in bot hell. You're not really playing people. But Hassa keeps dominating with this Hella deck. I've got to test it out more. Hella should be relatively doable with very few pool 3 cards. You just need like high power stuff and like Jubilee. You probably want Ghost Rider if you're gonna play Hella, but whatever. Look, I don't know if this is any good. You can check the win rate. I'll show you the Hella deck at some point. I'm going to play this and make a video on it. Should you get Hella? My gut says no, but the data might just disagree. All right, Pool 4. Modoc is dropping in July. If you didn't get Modoc on the season pass, well, if you have Dracula and Colleen, I think he's an excellent, excellent buy. I think with 2 months left in pool 4, he's absolutely worth the tokens. I think discard is a really powerful deck. It'll get you to at least the mid 90s. You might need something else to get you over the hump, but you need Colleen in order to have some targeted discard of Wolverine and your swarms, and you need Dracula because Dracula is extremely strong because he's either trucking America or Apocalypse every game, and a 4/9 or 4/20 or whatever nonsense he is one of the stronger things you can do. You need Modoc for this. Modoc is an excellent, excellent buy if you have the tokens and the time. I think he's a good shout. Stature's a July drop too, and in one of the best decks, but that really good deck runs like a bajillion high pool cards. So I wouldn't suggest it. However, if you have unlocked Black Bolt, a 1/7 is just a silly rate toward the end of the game. It's worth at least considering. I don't really recommend Stature, but if you have Black Bolt, look at them. Stature also works with Moon Knight, but at that point you need Ghost Rider and it becomes a whole thing. It's much more complicated. That is a much, much more involved deck. Finally, Zabu. Zabu is the best of all these cards in Pool 4, but he is a June drop. So if you can wait another month and a half, you just get Zabu as he gets to Pool 3. But Zabu has 1,000 homes. He is in a ton of excellent decks. If you have Darkhawk, you really want Zabu. If you like Control, you really want Zabu. Zabu has a great home in Sarah decks because making Enchantress strong and often Darkhawk cheaper is stellar. This, by the way, is where America Chavez really starts to make sense in those Sarah decks. Zabu is a stellar card. He was broken when he was a 3/2. If you got him in the season pass, bless. You know how broken he was. Now he's just a great card. Cannot recommend more highly if you like these cards. And a lot of the really good Pool 4 cards are, a lot of good 4-cost cards are lower rarity. They're Pool 1 and Pool 2 cards. So if you like Control at all, you like Darkhawk at all, go for it. Zabu is not going to be a card you're sad to own. Finally, the only Series 5 that's out right now that I would even consider buying outside of, I guess, Hit Monkey, if you're late to the party, is Jeff. Jeff is a 2/3 that moves wherever he wants. He's adorable, and he fits in every deck. I think he might right now be the best in slot 2-drop. It's close, but I think he's the best in slot in a generic deck 2-drop right now. He can be very frustrating to play against, and he's a really good meta answer because Professor X is freaking everywhere right now. So Jeff is great. Jeff is worth considering buying. Cool. Should you buy Jeff? I still vote no. We've got a lot of powerful new cards. I don't want to give you a recommendation on whether to buy the cards coming out this season until there's actual data on them. I'm going to tell you this quickly. All the content creators, myself included, were in love with a card called Ghost. Ghost is a 1/2 that always makes you go second. Turns out Ghost is terrible. Giant waste of tokens. I bought them. Half the content creators in the game bought them. It was sad. Like, so sad. I don't want to assume just because we think a card's going to be good, it's going to be good. Sometimes we're right, sometimes we're wrong. Until the data comes out, until we play with the cards, it's really hard to tell. But as of right now, Jeff is the only Pool 5 I would recommend you even consider, and I think he is much more of a 3,000 token card than a 6,000 token card. Cool? All right. I will give you more information about what I think of those other cards as we go. Finally, we'll talk about the new cards as they come out every single week. I talk about the new card that came out. I give you decks from some of the best creators out there, and I build a bunch myself. Make sure you sub for Snap Take every single weekday, and check us out on Twitter at SnapJudgeCast. Every Tuesday, or almost every Tuesday, on Patch Notes days, it's Wednesday. Check out the Snap Judgments podcast. Judgments with no E. We're on all the podcatchers. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow for another Snap Take. Tomorrow, how to play Galactus, how to beat Galactus with some special guests.